Okay, we're opening the zoning board of appeals meeting for December 3rd, 2013. The Board of Appeals will conduct this meeting according to the rules laid out in Chapter 48 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Robert's Rules of Order, and its own particular set of rules entitled Rules of Procedure, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk. Another copy is available from the clerk at this meeting. This meeting is being tape recorded for the purpose of taking minutes. Once the minutes are approved, the tape may be taped over. Okay, as we all know, Patty, our clerk, is not here, so obviously we're going to be turning to the video at some point to get the minutes for these meetings and things like that. First of all, the finance report, I would recommend we just pass over that for this time being, and not a lot happens in a month, so I think Patty can update us in January. Secondly, the meeting, the minutes of that brief meeting we had on November 5th. Would someone like to make a motion to approve those minutes? It's literally a page and a half.
So moved.
Second.
Where are they? Sorry.
Was I
It's
there?
okay?
Is it in here?
Yeah. I second.
There we go.
Okay. I'm sure we've all seen these two.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's been moved. Building correspondence. Well, the first one was to continue the hearing from a month ago. So that's not really an issue at this point. Then there was a request for extension of time. Well, that's the same thing. That was, this past month for these guys that are here right now. Oh, here's correspondence, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a denial.
November 19th.
No, it's not a denial, it's, operated convenience store, 70 West Main.
Has been
Been
denied.
denied, so we'll probably be reviewing that at some point in the near future. They probably need to put an application in for us. And then there's another denial here for the Triad Driving Academy, which is happening at 6474 East Main Street, which I believe we're going to be talking about today. Yep. And lastly is another correspondence from the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, 4-session certificate program, so obviously you guys can read that later.
Keep sending them to me.
Well, you're the chairman.
Maybe what are they trying to tell me?
I don't know.
Need more training.
So that covers all of our correspondence.
Alright.
We won't be delving into the zoning application revisions right now. We've got a little bit on our plate. We'll deal with that at a later date. And everyone's got a new application for 4 Crescent Meadow Lane. It's in a nondescript
Yep.
white envelope. Okay.
That's it, right?
Any other issues for the business meeting, folks?
Other than the application I had agreed to work on, I had not had a chance to do that yet, but I will get with Patty on that.
Okay.
Hopefully December's a slower month, I get some time to deal with it.
All right.
And anybody else who feels like jumping in.
Love to.
I'm sure you would.
All right. Someone like to make a motion to close the business meeting for December 3rd.
So moved.
I'll
Second.
Beat me to
All
it.
those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion carries. We got, what, 15 minutes?
And then Kathleen, you can shut that off for about 15 minutes, please? Yeah, we will. Okay, we are opening the, revisiting the continued
Hearing.
hearings, thank you very much, for, where are we at here? 6474 East Main Street. The hearing started originally on September 3rd, 2013. The Board of Appeals will conduct this meeting according to the rules laid out in Chapter 40A of the General Laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Robert's Rules of Order, and its own particular set of rules entitled Rules of Procedure, a copy of which is on file with the town clerk. Other copies are available from the clerk at this meeting. This meeting is being tape recorded for the purpose of taking minutes. Once the minutes are approved, the tape may be taped over. Yes, please, yes. The present members of the board tonight are Gina Tebow, to my right, Jeff Moore, Dave Kapnis, and I'm Paul Schillen. And Sharon Freeman has recused herself because she is a, what is she? She's
An abutter.
An abutter, thank you.
She in the butter?
Yeah. First of all, we're gonna read the legal ad originally from September 3rd.
Applications, petitions have been made by Constantine G. Scrivanos, trustee, Mistra Realty Trust 3, Pluff Ave, North Reading, Mass. 01864, owner of 64 through 74 East Main Street, Georgetown Plaza, Georgetown, Mass. 01833, in the RA District, and identified on Assessor's Map 11A, Lot 85. The proposal includes exterior and interior updates and site alterations and uses involving no change in building size or square footage, but require a special permit to allow for change, extension, or alteration of pre-existing lawful non-conforming use or structure, exterior building only, a use variance to allow additional uses in RA zone, and modifications to 2 variant section 6 finding decisions to modify, amend 2 previous ZBA decisions, 97-17 and 02-9, in regard to the existing pylon sign pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A, Section 6, 9, and 10, and the Georgetown zoning bylaws, Chapters 165, Sections 9, 78, 79, 84, 87, and 94. A water resource special permit is required for a sewage flow exceeding 110 gallons per day per 10,000 square foot of lot area pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A, Section 9, and Chapter 165, Article 5, Sections 29 through 39 of the Georgetown zoning bylaws. Note, this hearing was postponed to 10/1/13 and continued to 11/5/13.
Thank you, Gina. At this point, I'm also gonna have Dave read, there's a petition to withdraw some parts of that original application. So just to be clear, you can read that, and then we will deal with the actual application and sign that once we're done with the hearing.
Dated November 25, 2013, it's sent via email to the Zoning Board of Appeals in Georgetown regarding applicants for special permits for variances, Georgetown Zoning Board of Appeals, property 64 to 74 East Main Street. The applicant petitioner is Mr. Realty Trust. Dear Chairman Schilling and other board members, on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Realty Trust, this letter constitutes a formal request to withdraw without prejudice the following applications. Number 1. Application for special permit to allow change, extension, or alteration to a pre-existing lawful non-conforming use and structure under Chapter 165, Sections 87 and 94 of the zoning bylaws, as well as MGLA 40A, Sections 6 and 9, in connection with certain proposed site improvements. And number 2, application for water resources district special permit under Chapter 165, Article 5, Sections 29 through 38 of the zoning bylaws. The reason for the withdrawal request is that the applicant has recently entered into an agreement to purchase the abutting property, known and numbered as 60 East Main Street. The addition of this 0.75 acre parcel provides the applicant with more flexibility as to site layout and design. So as to avoid confusion with other pending applications, however, we request the board to vote to accept the withdrawal of the findings without prejudice. It is anticipated that the applicant would refile such permits, which would incorporate the additional parcel within the next several months once engineering is completed. In addition to the withdrawal of the special permits above, the applicant is also requesting the board consent to partially withdraw without prejudice use variance petition as it relates to both the proposed animal hospital and printing shop uses. Further, since our last meeting with the board, we have also received strong interest from a driving school to lease a portion of the building for driving school purposes. To this end, we are modifying the pending use variance petition in connection with the proposed school use from nursery school use to driving school use. Except as modified above, we intend to proceed with the variance petition, including the request to modify the existing standing sign currently pending before the board as per the petition. At the board's December 3rd hearing, we will elaborate on these developments. Please feel free to contact my office with any further questions or concerns. Thank you sincerely, John T. Smolak. CC was Mr. Realty Trust, Chris Bagus, and William Sparagus.
Thank you. The order in which we're gonna do this, you can now bring us up to date with everything you guys are requesting. After that, there's a possible new correspondence, from actually Sharon Freeman, who was in a butter. But we'll do new correspondence after you do your presentation,
Okay.
so go right ahead and,
I can read it off of here.
okay, that's great.
All right, remind me.
Yep,
All right,
Okay.
good evening, Mr. Chairman and other board members. For the record, John Smolak, attorney for the applicant and petitioner, Mr. Realty Trust. Rosanna Francis of, the representative of the applicant petitioner is also here this evening. As mentioned in the letter that we delivered to the board back on November 25th, a couple of things have happened. First, as noted in the letter, we've secured rights to the adjacent property at 60 East Main Street as a possible extension or expansion of the existing commercial property. And as a follow-up to our original hearing several months ago, one of the concerns was the issue of the height of the retaining wall and so on and so forth, and the layout, and that it was fairly tight. And we think that this additional parcel would provide some additional flexibility and sort of soften that elevation in that area. We're currently undertaking testing of the property, soils testing, to examine it for purposes of septic system design and the like. And so it doesn't appear to make sense at this point to amend that application, and we are trying to simplify this application by undertaking the requests that we've provided to you, and then come back in another month or two with a new request with respect to the combined parcels. So that's one development. The other development is, as noted in the letter, the possibility of securing an additional tenant to the property for purposes of a driving school. And the pending use variance application does identify the request for a use variance in the legal notice. And so we consulted with the building inspector, and he suggested that it was an appropriate alternative to basically incorporate this new proposed use as part of this pending filing and application. There is a pending request for a nursery school use variance, and he suggested that a change from a nursery to a driving school is within the realm or within the scope of the legal ad and the notice and the proceedings. So that's the reason why we've submitted the that second component, that request with respect to the use variance.
okay,
And so, as you see in the letter and the draft decision, which your board administrator suggested that we put together, we've sort of outlined the facts and the statement of facts and the requested relief. Not trying to be presumptuous, but simply to assist the board in their review of this proposal. My understanding with respect to the driving school use is that it's for approximately 1,200 square feet for what you would see as a typical driving school. There'd be some limited classroom use, and students would be dropped off at the premises for any classroom use, and also the students would be picked up at their house or wherever for purposes of driving lessons. And so we don't think it's a noxious or intensive use in this circumstance, and probably a less intensive use than a nursery school type of use.
Okay.
Lay out what rough, just for the audience and just for the board as well. What's left of these variances, or,
Okay.
why don't you give us the list right now, because we're dealing with some uses, specific uses.
Right.
Dealing with the signage issue. Well, yeah, let me know, what's the rest of that list?
Sure. Well, the proposed relief at this point is for, is a combination of, request for use variances and dimensional variances, which would involve the modification of, the 1997 board decision, as well as the 2002, board decision, with respect to the property. And so, as a result of the proposed changes, the use variance request is now limited to retail stores and services, restaurant use, business and medical office use, as well as driving school use. So the nursery school, the print shop, and the animal hospital use have been are proposed to be withdrawn.
Yeah, some of those are already, you already had some of those, correct? So,
Yes,
So
the
the
retail
additional-
restaurant use and the medical office
Yes.
use, depending on how you classify the Dunkin' Donuts, it could be considered a restaurant or a retail use.
so we have the use issues.
Right.
So of those lists, not to interrupt, and we can get into more questions, I guess, after, but of those uses, which ones are you specifically granted for right now? I know you got restaurant I'm looking at the 97 decision. You were granted specifically use for a restaurant at some point along the way.
Right, and the office uses have been there for a number of years. I don't know when those uses had first commenced, but but at the time, because no one here was present when those uses were commenced, but approvals were given at that time to use the premises for those uses, for medical office use and for the Dunkin' Donuts use, which is.
Also, medical office was already pre-existing at some point.
It must have been, right. And so what we're trying to do is reconfirm those uses by virtue of this grant. Because we don't have the records of actually when those, in
Right.
terms of what the discussion ensued with
Yeah,
respect
yeah.
with the building inspector at the time. And so with respect to the dimensional variance request, it's really not a change in the freestanding sign in terms of its dimensions, but what it does involve is a change in the design of the freestanding sign, which was already submitted to the board. Basically, if we're going to undertake the building facade renovations, which didn't require relief based on the building inspector's determination, wanted to make sure that the sign matches those exterior renovations in terms of color and style and the like, and the lighting. And so the other issue that was raised at the last board meeting was, are we always going to keep 6 or 7 panels? And because tenants will constantly change, what we wanted to do is to try to build in some flexibility as to the size and the number of panels. And what we're proposing is that the applicant would have the ability to modify those panels, provided that we stay within the envelope of the approved area for signage. And so I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
And so what I was trying to do as part of a draft suggested decision was to try to maintain the conditions that were approved as part of the O2 variance decision, just try to keep them as consistent as possible with respect to that freestanding sign.
So the freestanding sign is gonna be per your original, I think, was it Fishbrook and Design who designed
That's correct.
that?
There's
Okay.
a sign plan that compares what's there today versus what we're proposing. Actually, what
Alright,
was
so-
approved versus what we're proposing.
And the reason why I was asking is I think there was some discussion that, here it is, whether you wanted to change that at all. So you've decided you're gonna stay with this original.
With right, and actually there was a comparison of the signage. There's a plan there that should be in the materials.
Okay.
That was a supplement to what we originally filed. And I could,
Okay,
if you don't have that in hand, I could,
that's okay. I just wanna know what it looks like,
sure.
or what you would like it to look like,
Right.
I guess is the right way.
And so there, the other piece of this is that there are a number of conditions which are in the 1997 variance decision, which aren't reflected, aren't consistent with what's out there in the field today. And there are a couple of ways that we could approach that. Either those could be dealt with as part of a site plan review process when we come back, after we come back to this board. With respect to both properties, we can go through the process with the Board of Appeals and then go to the site plan, go through to the planning board for site plan review. Or alternatively, if the board wants to maintain those conditions, what we'll do is we'll just come back and request a modification when we refile. The conditions really are more traffic circulation conditions that are more attuned to site plan review, which apparently wasn't undertaken at the time those decisions were issued. And so, not trying to suggest that we take jurisdiction away from the board, but it's just it might be more appropriate for those conditions and those matters to be handled by the planning board as part of the site plan review process.
Yeah, quite possibly. And I'll just plug this in here. It was an email to Patty, our clerk. In reviewing it comes from the Fire Prevention Division, Albert Beardsley, Fire Chief. In reviewing the plans for the project to improve the exterior of this location to include the parking areas, the fire department's only concern is over the narrow access ways around the building. Due to the length of some of our apparatus, we need to make sure that the area on the Dunkin' Donuts side is no less than 20 feet wide. Oh, so it must be the side of the building. Other than that, there are no issues at this time. Just wanted to make that clear. So,
Let me read in the other correspondence while we're doing that.
sure, go right ahead.
You wanna
That'd
do
be
that
great.
right now?
Yep.
Okay. This is from Sharon Freeman, regarding the Dunkin' Donuts Plaza, 66 East Main Street. I recuse myself as a ZBA board member for this hearing. I write as an abutter to Dunkin' Donuts Plaza. Generally speaking, my husband Peter Freeman and I support the concept of pre-approving septic uses, provided that it is allowed by law and does not change or diminish the current zoning regulations for the property. Of the uses in the initial proposal, we had concerns about the print shop and the veterinary clinic. Without additional information, it is difficult to assess the noise impact and potential chemical waste. Of paramount importance is that any pre-approved use be consistent with that of a residentially zoned area. General concerns are noise, waste, hours of operation, and potential detriment to the residential community and to residential property value. With regard to the proposed parking lot on top of the expanded septic system, we are extremely concerned about the elevation impact, the noise and light pollution, all of which will diminish quality of life and adversely impact the residential property value. We are aware that the owners of the Dunkin' Donuts Plaza may be in the process of purchasing 62 East Main Street. We respectfully request that if as a result of this purchase there are changes to the current proposal, that this hearing be formally closed and that a new hearing be opened so that the proposed changes can be fully reviewed by the abutters and the community in general. Thank you in advance, Sharon and Peter Freeman, 58 East Main Street in Georgetown.
Thank you.
Okay, I can print that for her to add in later.
Okay,
All right.
keep going. Good.
Okay.
Well, so we've got, we have the three different areas, so if you want to elaborate any more than that would be great.
Well, just maybe an elaboration on, in response to the comments that you received. My understanding is that our project engineer had met with the fire department since the issuance of that letter, and that's a site plan related issue that we'll address when we refile. And I think we wanted to make sure that the fire department knew we weren't changing, we're reducing the area of the width of the corridors. And so we can certainly work with the fire department on that issue. And I think in terms of the other letter that you received from Sharon Freeman, we'll certainly address issues as they come about as part of the redesign of the site. And again, I think that with the addition of the adjacent parcel, I think it'll make for a better site design. And what we want to do is take some time to work on that as well.
Mhm.
And that's the reason, again, for the withdrawal of the watershed special permit, as well as the Section 6, or non-conforming use, structure filing as well, special permit filing. So I think that's what we wanted to convey this evening. We're trying to narrow down the requested relief this evening, principally because of the additional parcel coming into play. And also, we really would like to be in a position to obtain the approval to allow for the new use as a driving school for the property.
Comments, board?
I have plenty of questions. I don't know, do you take the audience first, or we? you wanna do that?
I think we're, let's look at my
I've
list
got
of,
several questions to sort things out, but.
you're correct, the board, if the, excuse me, if the audience has anything to add to this at this point, they're free to come up and, if you could,
Do we have a sign?
is there anyone that would like to say anything? No? Okay. If you do, at any point, you'd come up to this table here, put your name and address and information on that piece of paper down there, and then address the board. But if there's nothing at this point, then it's the board can now ask some questions of the applicant.
I want to just go back for a second to the request that we have in front of us, which is either a modification to an existing variance decision, or it's a request for a new variance. I want to try to understand what we're working on here, because they're sort of two different things.
Well, maybe it's form over substance. We could have, actually, we could have refiled for a new variance, but basically, because there are some conditions attached
Yes.
to the old variances, and actually, the 97 decision was a combination of a variance and a section 6 or a non-conforming use decision.
Right.
So we thought the simplest way to deal with this was sort of to modify those conditions.
So what we're looking at is modifying an existing variance decision
Correct.
for the site. So, looking back, the allowed use was for a restaurant specifically, that was it.
Right.
And that was for 6668 East Main Street, which was, I assume, 3 units at the time.
Well, it's unclear from the background, because there are various addresses that have been used for the same parcel
Mhm.
over the years. And so, based on the assessor's records, the address today is 6474
Right.
East Main. And so it's a bit mixed in terms of the prior decisions that have been issued since even the 60s or so, but it's been within the 6474 block. So we thought that we'd take the opportunity to just clarify that, and actually, if the board does entertain a decision this evening, I've put together a draft decision and actually addresses that issue. Since the board has been issued a copy of this draft, I've made a couple of hand-marked changes
Mhm.
based on some other items that I've seen. I can distribute those later if the board wants to discuss those.
Honestly, haven't had the chance to review this whole document, which is, I know you took a lot of time to put a lot of facts in there, but, and I don't know what the plan was submitted at the time. I guess what I'm getting at is the applicant came asking for a restaurant, that was granted with certain conditions, which are laid out here, that was for the property.
Right.
The uses that you're specifically requesting, over a certain period of time, perhaps some of the uses have actually been already implemented, some haven't. They may or may not be being used now. I'm not exactly sure. Some of those units are vacant.
Right.
I don't know when the property went from 3 units to 10 units. It was sometime after this decision was made or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
I mean, this specifically
Mhm.
relates to a request for a restaurant. And I don't know what that plan is that was submitted. I haven't seen that.
Right, we reviewed the files and tried to identify those old plans, and we couldn't locate those. But I guess the intention of this latest filing is to make sure that it's absolutely clear the types of uses that are permitted within the building. My sense is that that the building may have been carved up differently internally, but that the uses are
maybe.
consistent.
I don't know what the plan submitted looked like. I assumed it was for, was it not for, it was not for Dunkin' Donuts at that time in '97, was it? It was for some.
I believe the driver back in '97 was for Dunkin' Donuts at the time.
Is that, it doesn't specifically mention Dunkin's in there, but I'm assuming the restaurant was for the donut shop, but, so I guess where I'm going with some of this is that these, requested uses sort of trigger, there's a link between the requested uses and the necessary site improvements that are gonna be required in order to implement those uses.
Right.
And we had a plan that you submitted earlier that you now want to modify, which totally understand and appreciate. But that was the master plan that was going to allow for the uses that you were requesting. That plan has now been removed, which required some substantial modification to the site. You're still asking for the uses, which we know, if these are all granted, by definition, are gonna require some substantial remodification of the site, and I don't know what that's gonna look like yet. So my concern is that if we seriously consider granting these uses now, as a board member, I don't know what the impact of that is gonna be physically to the site, or whatever potential detriment there may be associated with that. Uses as looking at these as uses in any one of those units, traffic and all that, I don't necessarily have an issue with
Right,
any one
right.
of them, except for the fact that we know you don't have necessarily adequate parking or septic to implement those uses. So you're gonna have to do something.
Right.
Which is what happens next door, or what happens with your septic. All of that may or may not be considered to be detrimental to this board. So it's almost like you get this, and then you deal with planning down the road, and we weren't aware of the potential detriments that we know are gonna be,
Mhm.
if any.
Sure.
I-
No, I mean, that's an entirely appropriate question. I think that, in terms of the proposed uses, that this is a partial list of what we initially had requested. We understand that there are some proposed, that we will come back with some additional site plan changes. But by virtue of the fact that we're withdrawing the special permit for an extension of the pre-existing lawful non-conforming use,
Right.
which governs parking,
Mhm.
means that we're stuck with the parking that we have. And so if we're looking to expand, then, which requires additional parking, I think that's a natural sort of limitation on what we're able to do out there. I mean, we whether you classify Dunkin' Donuts as a retail store or restaurant, it's unclear how you classify that, but there's an existing, there are existing medical offices out there as well. And we are going to be coming back within a matter of a month or two to address those issues. And so, in terms of how to address that issue, I'm not sure how to alleviate your concerns, other than the fact that we're limited to parking today. And the parking that's going to be used for the driving school is going to be very limited in terms of a need.
Yeah, and
And septic, none of these are heavy septic, right? Except for the restaurant,
I think
and
the medical
is
offices
existing.
are.
it's a medical office,
Yeah.
though, not a,
And the building inspector had also suggested that,
Doctors.
any modification of the septic
Yeah.
system wouldn't require relief.
what is a medical office? Because is it where, do they take appointments? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is there medical waste?
Yeah. Well, can you
So-
provide a better description of the purposes?
Because if there's somebody already there.
Right.
We have a deadline.
Right, so we already have somebody there, Pentucket Medical.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that they have like 2 doctors. I can certainly, in their lease, they're required to provide us medical waste, what their medical waste would look like. And so I can definitely get the specifics.
Okay.
But in terms of medical waste, that's heavily regulated, and in the original filing that we've made, we provided the board with a copy of the regulations governing medical waste.
Okay.
But I think there's not a significant amount of that type of waste, and the other tenant is
Rehab.
a rehab.
Just looking to see
Just
if we
a
actually
quick-
had a definition.
Just a
which-
clarification, board members. This application we have in front of us is the first time that the app did, it's been 6474 East Main Street. Prior to that, 2002, it was still listed as 6668 East Main Street.
Right, which is 3.
Right.
That was also in
So
19
obviously, it's changed significantly.
Also in 1997, it was 66 to
It's been that way
68.
from the very beginning. This is the first application where there's been a change in the address of that building, for what it's worth.
Well, I have a question regarding the ingress and egress, which I don't know if the fire department has ever addressed that, because back in 97, it was, one of the conditions was to have 50 feet with an island separating it,
Right.
and probably have about 30 feet or so, right now with no island separating them. I mean, I know what it's like to be leaving there, and somebody who wants to turn right still kinda goes to the left there, and you just,
Right.
and wait, I don't know if that's been brought up, if it's been addressed by planning board or,
Yeah, well,
Fire.
we haven't been before the planning board yet, and also, I don't believe that the fire department has addressed that issue and made a comment on that issue, but they've been provided with the plans. But we will be coming back within a month or two to address those issues, and that was the intention. If the board is willing to allow us to do that, because we'd rather come back with a comprehensive site plan dealing with the site issues at one point, but what we're hoping this evening is simply to, if the board's willing to do so, is to allow us to modify the sign and also to allow this new use. So that proposal has not been forgotten by us. We know we have to address that to make sure that those conditions, which were identified by the building inspector in his denial letter, are addressed.
well, I guess what my concern might be is that if back in '97, there was a feeling that this should be increased to 50 feet, okay? And it was then only 66, 68, so it's increased, you know, let's call it just twice with the amount of occupants there. And now we're looking to increase more traffic flow,
The conditions.
okay, increase parking, and I don't know if that would be detrimental to not only just neighbors, but, you know, anybody, you know, trying to frequent that plaza.
Right, and I certainly understand that. Keep in mind also that the building size hasn't changed, and so what was reviewed back in '97 includes a building that's the same size.
I understand.
And the additional use was the restaurant use, which would be the most intensive of the uses. And my sense is that, in terms of the site changes, my sense today is that the planning board would probably want those access points reduced to about 30 feet, which is the standard for most retail plazas in terms of the width. And so we will certainly address those issues, and the question is one of timing as to when those access points are addressed. And what we're proposing is that we would address those within the next couple months when we refile, and then go through site plan review. That's the request, because we want to get this new tenant in. That'll help us with additional revenue to pay for some of the upgrades that we intend to undertake. And so we're asking for a little bit of a leap of faith that when we come back, we'll make all these site changes.
Okay, not to bring up a sore subject, but as far as a leap of faith goes, back in '97, there were a couple items here that were conditions from the board that were not adhered to.
Understood.
Okay.
What is your, and I don't know if it's too soon to ask this question, but what is your intent with the property next door? Because it's a residential, it's zoned residential.
As is this, you're right, as is this current parcel, it's zoned residential. And so it's been, as mentioned in the original application, the site has been used for non-residential uses since the 60s. The intention is to give us some additional flexibility on that adjacent parcel. What exactly is going to be placed on that adjacent parcel, we won't know until we come back and with an engineering design. But what we do know is that the building is going to stay the same. Just a matter of what improvements would be made on that adjacent parcel. It might be just the movement of the septic system, might be a movement of a little bit of the parking. Again, with the idea of trying to decrease the differences in elevation that we had originally provided as part of the initial application.
You say
Elevation with respect to the retaining wall, with respect to
Right.
the septic system.
Now, when you say the building, it'll be, are you talking about the residential structure, or are you talking about the?
I'm sorry, I'm talking about the existing commercial building.
Yeah, okay. So you don't know what you're gonna do with the residential structure, if any?
Don't know yet. Don't know yet.
Um,
I mean, we have options. I mean, we could try to keep it, or or we might have to remove it. We just don't know yet.
So, and that is not a existing non-conforming use, that is a residential use that has always been residential, so.
Correct.
Those are two separate lots with two separate histories, so.
Correct.
I mean, you can't do anything on that lot associated with the commercial building without
A use variance.
A new use variance.
Correct.
Not a modification, anything existing, it would have to be a new use variance with hardship and all of that, something to do with that lot. The new lot that you bought has got to prove hardship somehow, that it can't be used for the existing use,
Right.
which is gonna be pretty difficult because it's
Right.
been a residential use for a long time.
Right, well, I guess, you know, when we come to it, we'll certainly try to address the concerns, but again, the reason why we're looking for that additional parcel to add it to this is to address some of the initial concerns that were raised as part of this original proceeding. That's the issue of grading and the like. And, I mean, historically, the adjacent, I mean, this current property at 6474, or 6874, whatever you wanna call it, has always, been used for a variety of uses, has always been, from what I can see, zoned residential. And so,
Yeah, the existing commercial lot, no doubt, has got a history of certain types of uses, but the intensity of those uses has been always restricted by your parking and septic limitations, among perhaps other
Right.
things. And what's happened here over the years, and right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't know. It was originally a grocery store, and then it got
Right.
expanded a little bit, and then it moved over, and then it's too dilapidated, so therefore we need to do this because the hardship is that it needs to be expanded, because we don't want the building falling, so it gets a little bigger here and a little bigger here. Then we grant these uses, and well, okay, we can do it, but that we're really restricted because we don't have enough parking to do these uses that we're now specifically granted to have. So we really need to expand our parking and our septic, so we're gonna buy the lot next door, and we're gonna move over there and expand it. You know, it's scope creep over a 20, 30-year period here, that like I said, I don't know what the master plan is gonna look like between the existing lot that is existing non-conforming, the lots that's been purchased next door, and what that whole plan is gonna look like. So I'm a little uncomfortable specifically granting uses which we know require some sort of a major site upgrade
mhm.
in order to fully utilize them. So I don't know, I understand what you're saying, most of these have probably been in there in one form or another along the way. So maybe I'm overthinking things a little
Oh,
bit, but we can talk about that, I guess, in
Yeah.
board discussion when we get there, but
Yeah,
you know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying?
the- I
And
mean,
I'm not saying I'm even opposed to this, I'm just saying,
Right.
the other plan, I could understand. It made some sense, I did have concerns about the septic, as I know other boards have as well. And is there detriment to the neighborhood and everything else that we need to consider simply by saying, you know, can these uses reside in those particular units at that site? I don't think so. But if those then trigger major modifications that might result in, you know, major changes to that residential neighborhood that people would have a hardship with, bad choice of words, but people would find difficult as well. Yeah, I mean, that would cause some detriment, so
Yeah.
it's not the use, it's the trigger between those uses and major site modification that are gonna be required, and we know what's coming, you know, and personally, I'd like to see the whole scheme, because you may have a terrific one. You know, I'm sure you will, but.
Right, perfectly valid concerns, I don't disagree with you, and, what I can say, though, is, you know, I think that the uses that we're proposing today are fairly limited. And also, with respect to the adjacent lot behind that lot, keep in mind that there's a Verizon switching station behind it, so it's not entirely residential, but we certainly wanna respect the residential character of the neighborhood, and we certainly will make that a priority when we come back with a revised site plan.
So John, if I may, and I completely respect kind of wanting to see the whole big picture of what it's gonna look like. I would say from a practical perspective, I would just ask if the board could consider, we have a tenant, this is the driving school.
Right, right.
And they're a live tenant that we're trying to help get into the plaza and start their business. And so, you know, if there was any way to, at the very minimum, have that use be able to move forward, that would be of great benefit to them and to the plaza, particularly when this use doesn't, I mean, it's a classroom, right?
My next suggestion was gonna be not to, you know, poo-poo the whole idea here, but I don't have any issue with the driving school, and so, not to cut you short,
Oh,
but
no,
I
no,
know
I just,
exactly
I'm
where
just,
you're
you know,
going.
and I know I sound like the cheerleader for the driving school, but I really think that we, you know, this is like a here and now situation that we have, and
Yeah, I
they're-
mean, what you
they
need
wanna
today
spend money and-
is pretty clear. The rest of this stuff is really cleaning up, and they're getting dragged along or your request for this particular immediate requirement is getting dragged in with a lot of history here.
Well, they came in the middle, right?
Yeah, or, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Which is-
it's
which is
a
fine
little
with us.
unfair. I mean, if you had come
So-
specifically for driving school use without any of this history,
Right.
the meeting would have been over probably, well, I shouldn't say that, I don't know what other concerns the board made,
Right.
but we wouldn't be dragging this out so long, so.
Right, and keep in mind too, in terms of the current, how much of the plaza is currently occupied today? Is it about a third?
About a third, yeah.
About a third is currently occupied today, so we know that we have more than enough parking to accommodate, you know, the uses that we have.
Go there on a Saturday morning at about 9 o'clock. There's a lot
Dunkin's
of people
takes
at
the-
Dunkin's, yeah.
Sure,
Takes
sure.
2/3 of it.
Yeah.
Everybody in there for 5 minutes.
I'm sort of feeling, I don't, kind of the way Jeff is that I'm concerned with the purchase of the lot next door. It's a beautiful old house. It's some beautiful landscaping. And it's gonna change the way you drive into Georgetown if that house isn't there. And then there's more retail space. It's gonna start creeping down Georgetown streets, and that's the one thing that I didn't move to Georgetown to live near a strip mall. So that's my concern. That's why I asked about what the medical offices entails, because I don't know if that requires more septic, more parking, or anything like that. So I'm kind of on the same page as Jeff with perhaps clean it up when we have a site plan to actually look at, and maybe do the use that we know we can, for lack of a better word, trust isn't gonna change the parking or the septic at this point.
All right, well, I certainly understand the concerns, and I guess, in terms of the adjacent parcel, it hasn't been decided whether that house will go. It may or may not go, we don't know, depending on the design. So we're looking at that as an alternative, and I understand the concern about changing the character, and we certainly don't want to impact the character, and so.
And one
but-
person too, that's the way I feel.
Sure. And no, I mean, your points are perfectly valid, and I guess the other point is that we also want to try to make this a viable retail center or office center, so that we can continue to make improvements and keep it upgraded and the like, so. But no, I don't disagree with your comments, no valid concerns.
As far as the sign, I mean, I don't have
Yeah,
any
we haven't talked
concerns
about
with the sign. I think probably because there's not a lot, I shouldn't speak for the board. I don't have any concerns with the sign.
No, yeah, I agree, it's fine. The new sign would look a lot better than the old one. And as far as the use variance on the driver's ed thing, again, there's no issue there. I don't see any issue with that. Anything beyond that is obviously tied to septic system sizes and whether we might end up, if your septic system gets big enough, you might be able to have another restaurant or something, which may be a good thing. We don't really know, but I
We don't know
agree-
yet, right.
I agree with the board. I mean, seems like the site design is really important to us as we grant use variances. Driving school, I don't see a problem with that. The conditions on the site itself, obviously, I agree, that potentially should go back to planning. That's part of your site design.
Right.
So I can see how we could, I don't think that, we're necessarily, personally, I'm not really comfortable in amending those conditions and eliminating them at this point. I would like the planning board to deal with that issue. I don't know whether it would come back to us, but I think you guys can come up with a very interesting plan if you're very creative. Obviously, you put some thought into this. I mean, clearly the town's not gonna be happy about tearing down one of the nicer antique houses on this main drag, but, so it seems like the use variance can we possibly, again, pull more out of this original?
Well, there's a couple of things too, if I
Yeah,
may.
yeah.
I mean, again, some of these uses are already in play here. I mean,
That's right.
we know that. So I'm not suggesting you need to go, we need to consider having to move some of the tenants out of here or anything like that.
Oh, of course
not.
And
No.
I'm not, what
I
I'm
was
getting
thinking
at
that.
is that, well, we could grant this use, but I don't know that, I'm not even comfortable really conditioning it, say, no further changes to the site without coming back to the board, because some of those changes may simply be septic issues, which are not really
Right.
gonna be our issues, other than the fact that it may be done on part of a residential lot that would have to come back to us for variance. I mean, I just don't know.
Right.
I don't know until, and you don't know. And so, and the other thing, the issue with the driving school is, I think that it's private, is that private education? Is that what, because that can be granted with a special permit.
That could be allowed by special permit, but our concern, as when we had the discussion,
Have to be a new application.
be a new application, be another
Which we
month
wanna do,
or
so.
longer, and so that's the reason why we took the variance route. And,
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah. I was
yeah.
wondering If we can we grant that? I guess we can grant that with a,
Is that amendment to the original variance? I mean,
Yeah,
they
we-
must have been granted, they've been granted uses over the years.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
we can attach our amendment to one of the original variances that were granted for use. I think there's two different times in there that it actually
it'd
happened.
have to be the,
Most recent, right?
well, it's basically
Mhm.
what he's already asking for, and instead of,
can you give us, 1 second?
yeah, I'm trying.
If you don't mind?
You wanna take a break?
Yeah, just,
Yeah, yeah.
5 minutes.
Let me just have
Or-
Kathleen.
Okay.
Kathleen, could you stop it, please?
I don't want you to have to,
I hope so. If it's pink, it's cool.
Okay, we're back on, folks. Yes, sir.
Okay, so, we hear your concerns loud and clear, and, what we'd like to propose is that, the use, if the board so agrees to do so, to approve these, the use variances for these specific uses, but only with respect to the existing uses that are there today. We already have the existing, use variance of the restaurant, we're just trying to reconfirm, the uses that are there today. But in that manner, what that will do is, perhaps alleviate your concern about any expansion, without the, corresponding site plan being changed, until we come back and revisit. But at least that'll allow us to reconfirm the uses that are out there are permitted. And also allow us to get the driving school into the, property as a working tenant.
Find me that list. What's that list again? Can you
It's,
just-
it's on the draft, on page 3 of the draft. Do you want me to read it to you?
Yes, please. Just, yeah, what's the list?
Retail store and service,
Yeah,
restaurant,
yeah,
business and medical offices,
yeah.
and driving school.
with respect to the existing tenants?
Existing tenants that are there.
The existing tenants. Okay. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, it essentially means that we know you're limited currently. Can't probably get another restaurant in there with the existing septic system. I mean, again, not that I have a problem with it, but I know there's limitations, so,
It's just buying us 60 days until
Yeah,
we come
that's
back.
fine.
yep.
That's fine.
So the-
Business medicals, you already have it.
Right.
Yeah, I do not have a problem with that either.
Not to be, too picky, but I think by saying with respect to the existing tenants, as of today, we know who's in there and what they're doing, and that can be,
Mhm.
down the road, can be looked at. It's pretty clear what's going on, as opposed to what these uses can be.
So I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
I'm basically, what he's saying is with respect to the existing tenants.
Oh, okay.
So you've got folks in there.
So like,
Yeah.
if, for instance, we have a rehab business,
Mhm.
if the rehab business leaves, but another rehab business comes in, they're grandfathered in? Or do they have to come back here?
Well, yeah, I would think so, yes, yeah,
Okay,
because that's
alright, so
what
that's
you're,
good, that's what we want.
one of the
yeah.
big intentions you have with your use, well, within reason, I guess. I know what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get a list of clear uses so that you don't have to keep coming back to the board.
Right, so.
I
right,
totally
so-
understand
Well-
that.
So they're all
Well-
conform, so if they were,
Can-
what they used
I
to.
feel a little differently about that. I feel like when you say existing tenants, it's the tenants that are there. So if the rehab place left, within your 60 days before you go through your whole thing, you would have to come back. The chances are slim. I think once you come back, everything's gonna be cleaned up. We'll have a plan to review and approve, you know what I mean? So if something were to happen in the 60 days, no. And that's my opinion.
I
I
don't,
think the goal was to have whatever's there now be a conforming use.
right,
And
I
Not-
understand, I don't,
Do you think? What do you think?
I mean, variances are for here and never after. So,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't, no, it's true. I mean, legally, a variance that goes with the property, and you guys could sell this tomorrow, and the next person can say, I have the right to do a medical office. I don't know what your plans are down the road.
Well, it's the same special permit too. But, I mean,
Well, that's true.
yeah. But,
Depending, well, we can condition them differently.
Right.
I can't,
I don't have a problem conditioning with no changes to the site. Unless you
well,
come back to the
exactly,
board.
that's
No,
that's
you
exactly
know.
my point, is that if they then need to.
Again, I don't.
They want to substantially change the use, like it's not just another, it's not, again, the example I use is another restaurant, but a bigger one, like a Burger King or something. Clearly, they can't do that without changing the site.
right.
So I think they're limited to light-duty retail, they're limited to a couple small medical offices, so I don't think, over time, if they never change the site, they can't substantially change the uses that they already have.
And personally, I don't have a problem with any of these uses to the extent you're gonna keep the site the way it is for now, because that's, I don't see any of these particular uses being detrimental.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
I agree.
We haven't talked about them in any depth, but I don't really see a real detriment here. So, and as you said, they've all been in there at one time or another. That's
I
fine.
think the plaza's
But-
limited by design, so if we.
Right.
Exactly,
so-
but we all know that once
Yeah.
you lock in these uses for the long term, the next step is gonna be, okay, let's acquire the lot next door and let's start expanding so that we can increase the density of this use in the existing building to the maximum possible. That's where we run into potential problems. I don't know, 'cause
Right.
I don't know what your plan is. But clearly, the first step is, let's make sure we're clear that these uses are allowed in the site. And the next step is gonna be, let's maximize it. And the way you're gonna maximize it is you're gonna do some major renovations down there, which some people, which I don't even know what it's gonna look like. So it might be terrific, and there might be some real concerns. That's what I'm getting at. So, I mean,
I don't have an issue with the change of use, allowing, granting these uses
With,
I don't either.
without, in keeping the building the same.
With
this point in time.
no modifications to
No
the site
modifications
without
to the site.
coming back to the board.
And it can support it,
Ah.
based on what they have available
it
right now.
better that way.
I think
With
they
no
comfortably
modifications to
support
the
it.
site, would you guys agree with that?
Well, I mean, that's very broad, so, I mean, I think we would have to, we can obviously add signage, right? Like on like on front of the plaza, I mean, like when you say no modifications, maybe we could be a little bit more specific.
So
Well,
you're
this is
talking-
what happens when you come with a plan and then you take the plan away and you keep the uses. Now we don't have a plan. So this is where it gets
Well,
Right, but I
difficult
mean, the
because let's
concern
get more
is-
specific. So now we're gonna look at the sign. Well, you can change the lettering, but you can't change the color. And
I
then we're
mean,
gonna
interior
you can change
changes.
parking. Oh, but this is health department issue.
Interior
So
changes,
that's
you
really
don't
not
have
a
to
board.
do
So the
that.
board
Similar.
can't condition something that we don't have the authority to
So-
control. You know.
So, excuse me, so maybe it's exterior site improvements versus I mean, if we can't change.
I'm
the
worried
mind
about the
and
septic. I'm worried about parking. I'm worried about that house next door getting ripped down and you coming back and wanting to put a parking lot in over there. That's what I'm concerned about, frankly.
I think what we were talking
if-
about is basically the sign and the exterior alterations, the facade improvements.
I don't have any problem with that. I
Right,
thought that
that's
was
what,
terrific.
we just wanna be able to, if we did nothing at all, right, if we didn't do anything, then we would at least we would like to do some exterior work.
Well, you're gonna have to come
That's-
back for a
that's my
special
re-
permit. That's what you wanted before because it's
Well, no-
changes to existing non-conforming structure, right?
Actually,
Or
no, the building
I-
inspector had indicated and confirmed that any
think that was
exterior
needed.
alterations required no rezoning. relief.
However, if they expanded the building, that
Well,
was
they're not
my.
gonna- They don't plan to expand the building.
Well, I know, but hear
I
me
don't
out for a
think.
second.
I don't
Well,
think
this is
so.
the
Can't
thing.
expand the building.
Well,
Where to
it's.
go?
you-
I heard they're going up.
Not yet, anyway.
Mike.
Let's
Wait
start
another
with-
60 days.
That'll be the third application we come in with.
Well,
Vertical.
in reality, once you grant these uses, they can double up on all these uses, and then now they own the next property over. I'm serious. Like,
That's
who's
what
to
I'm
say
saying,
that the
what I just said,
who's-
yeah.
Well, who's to say the building can't get bigger at some point? Because then they have to come back to us.
Right.
So all I'm trying to get is the verbiage on
It's been coming back for us for 30 years.
with no exterior. Right.
Honestly, this is a grocery store. Now it's a plaza. I mean, it's what happens.
Well, that's
But,
what's
you know.
what's interesting
that's
is
what I'm
with
saying,
no
it's all
exterior
bad.
site modifications. I mean, there are exterior modifications literally on the building, but not there's aren't site modifications.
Right, that's what, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
we can make the distinction so that it's not overly broad and then we can't do anything at all.
No,
Oh,
I
I
think the site has to deal with the actual footprint of the site.
Right.
The only
The
thing-
building, you can modify the building, you can do whatever you want to the exterior, well, not whatever you
And
want.
add the
Building
name to the
versus
sign.
site, but
Yes.
The building and the sign.
Add the name to the sign, sure. That makes sense.
Well,
You know what I mean?
I'll be honest.
You
I
can, have,
mean,
you can have a business here, but no sign for you.
I don't think you need at this point. I don't think it's a big deal that that these uses be clear. No one's going to come in and say you got to kick your tenants out at this point, right? I mean, you've been operating this way. What you're trying to do is put it on paper that you can do this, but you're going to come back in a couple of months anyway with a new plan.
right, and it'd probably be the same uses.
It
But-
may,
but
but,
maybe,
but
uses
it'll
that
have
would
you'll
be
have all
allowed.
these issues
Mhm.
laid out at that point.
Right.
So, quite honestly, I don't have a problem with the driving school. I'm not exactly sure how to add that in. I don't have a problem with the sign. I think your proposal for the sign was fine, and I think we could figure out a way to get that done tonight. I think this just opens up a ton of questions. That this is what happens if we try to get something done, before 9 o'clock or whatever it is, and something gets missed, and it could be something on us, or it could be something you're definitely said, geez, we should have done something else, or it's open to interpretation because we didn't think it through, or we don't have a plan to point to say that's what we were talking about. So, I don't know. I don't know how to make it really simple without.
With no modifications to the site.
Or allow modifications only with respect to the building,
So-
the building facade and interior and sign, as shown on the plans. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
so
showed you the elevations.
You do plan to to move forward
Yeah,
with
so
that?
we do have all
Good
that.
point.
Would we do this, yeah?
Oh, the sign,
We
yeah.
certainly want the option to do that. So
So
we're
we
changing
Yeah,
have
the
which
signs.
is, which is
Yeah.
great, actually. I mean, that's good. But, I was thinking the whole thing was sort of on the table until you figure out how to deal with it, with everything else. But the facade upgrades and the sign upgrade are still on the
And
table.
the facade upgrades are not even on our. That's just building inspector issues. It's just the
Yeah,
sign.
yeah, you're right. I was confused. I
This-
was thinking that was part of what you were withdrawing.
That's why I think it's clear that it's, when I say
Modification.
site modifications, I think that's amply clear that it has nothing to do with the building. Doesn't
Remind
it?
me what you
On the
were
ground.
withdrawing.
Well, I mean, site can be broadly defined, but what we're talking about is we're not making any on-the-ground modifications, but simply building and sign modifications that, as per
I
plan.
don't have an issue with any of that, personally. Well, remind me again, the application for a special permit to allow for change, extension, alteration of a pre-existing lawful non-conforming. That item number 1 was withdrawing with respect to what?
Well,
Modifications.
that was geared towards the parking.
The parking, okay, all right.
Right.
Number
And
2
I
is
recall yeah, that's right, the building inspector indicated that a facade upgrade was not something that required a special permit.
Right.
Right,
Yeah, all right.
yeah.
Do you wanna draft something up?
Here you go.
Something less than 37 pages or whatever this was that I had. No, seriously, you wanna put a couple sentences together with what we're, I mean,
Sure.
otherwise
I mean,
we'll sit
it's-
here and do it, but you can probably do it a little quicker.
It's not much different from this. I can make a couple of tweaks here and there, but basically you're limiting, I mean, the only changes to this decision are that basically you're limiting the uses to the uses that are there today, number 1, and number 2, where the decision is drafted in such a way that it's allowing us to go forward with the exterior, with the building renovations and the sign,
And adding the driving school.
and adding the driving school as an
What do
additional
we,
use.
how are we addressing the sign? I mean, we obviously need to, you're gonna combine those into, are those two, we can combine those into one vote, correct? Those two issues, the use and the sign. Those two different votes? It's all in one
No, it could
application.
be whatever motion you wanna make, that would combine both, that's fine.
The third is the conditions, the amendment to eliminating those conditions. I'm not, we need to address that too.
I think a
mean,
lot of this
Yeah,
has
or-
to do with, that's cons.
Or we
when you
don't
have your new
address them
site plan.
today.
Yeah, I
Maybe,
would-
maybe
No, I
they're
think
just,
that's-
they just maintain, they're just maintained within the decision, and we come back.
Do you
and
need to
revisit those
withdraw
in
that
60
from your
days.
application?
No, but as part of the modification, request of modification, you don't have to grant the modification for those conditions. So that could be, so the conditions are in force and effect as of the 97 decision. So you don't
Okay.
have to change those
Yep.
at all. So if you want to keep those, you can.
I'm not looking for a rewrite of this, what I'm considering, I mean, not now, not tonight. But what I'm wondering about is a motion that captures what we're talking about, that we can get comfortable with as far as the restriction on any change. If we grant, if the
I
board wants to
agree.
look at these uses, we need a motion that properly addresses the correct existing decision, which that is, I think, already drafted. And then it basically conditions, you know, that nothing's gonna get changed over there until you come back with a larger plan. Right, and then the sign, so. I guess that's what I'm wondering, is how to word a
In
condition.
other words, an abbreviated motion.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Could I suggest something?
Sure,
Just,
absolutely.
Write it down.
Write it down. Well, I mean, the motion could be to grant the requested use variances for retail stores and services, restaurant, business and medical offices, and driving school, with respect to the existing tenants, as well as the proposed new driving school, as well as a grant of the modification to the 97-17 decision and 02-09 decisions to allow for the modification of the existing standing sign as per the plans that are contained within the decision. I don't know if that
That
works.
sounds perfect to
With
me.
the following condition.
With the following condition that
There will be no
I
changes
forgot about
to
that
the
part,
site
but yeah,
plan.
no, that's fine.
there will be no site modifications,
Yep.
i.e. ground? Is that
Just-
the
just
term used?
Period. Just,
Well, site modifications, not including the building, of course, correct? No, yeah,
Or it could be just simply modifications limited to, physical modifications limited to sign and building.
yeah.
Okay.
that's fine.
As
No,
per
no
plans.
modifications to the site other than, or something like that.
do you want to also include, you mentioned present tenants. Yeah, I think you want to mention future
Right,
tenants
we
as
just
well.
want whatever use is there now conforming, today or
Right.
future.
So I don't think you need to say present tenants. I think we're granting the use. I
Right,
think
right,
it's,
right.
yeah, I think
Right.
it's fine.
Current-
As
you know,
opposed
fix the
to
current uses.
Delineating the
That's
two,
fine,
present.
that's fine.
So should we write it down? Do it again, or do you just vote on it? I mean,
Yeah, we need to, somebody needs to
Yeah.
make a motion, so.
who can write faster?
Do we have any other,
I'm a
do
terrible,
we need to talk about any other board?
I need a pen, I can do it.
any other board members?
No, discussion. I guess we're already in.
We're pretty much into it. I think we're,
Do you want me to write it? I need a pen.
Coming up.
Oh,
Thank
you
you
did,
very
I'm
much.
sorry.
Keep that.
Yeah, yeah. Is it driving school pen?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, there
No,
you
that's-
go.
That's not bribery, is it?
No, it's under $25.
I would hope so.
Um,
Ah, Writes better than mine.
well, it'll be too big. I probably won't fit it all in here.
I think he's working on something.
Oh, are you writing something down too?
Trying to.
Yeah,
Okay.
let him do
Then
it.
we don't, yeah.
Professional.
Do you,
A lawyer.
oh,
Crying out loud.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna put it right in here.
Get paid tonight, might as well.
It'll be my new ZBA pen.
There you go. I like it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the problem. I never bring it because
We're gonna need the, before I close the meeting, we gotta deal with this.
we're gonna sign those.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. Then it's fine as is.
It is, okay.
If we're going to allow everything else that you already asked for, then it's fine as written, I think. All other conditions, all these other conditions need to stay, you know. Variances because this issue of hardship. You know. See, the board previously found that the structure in a residential zone was not a viable business in its current condition, that any further deterioration of the property could affect public safety and the good of the town. So that was the hardship hurdle.
Hmm. 3 members voted on that.
No, they all voted, it was insane.
Oh, well, how does that happen?
Isn't
I
that
didn't know
not
I could get
legal?
away with that.
Hey, this one. Only one. This one,
Oh, don't get any big ideas. We're just gonna keep getting text messages.
exactly, they didn't
I
have
don't get 'em
texting back
anymore.
then.
Poor Patty. No one pays
Uh,
attention. That's why I always email her when I get it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I've signed and these 2 other people. Cause I don't know if you guys tell her when you sign.
I just like going to the police station.
And being able to leave on your own free will.
Without
Try
cuffs.
this.
Here, I'm gonna give you this. This is those 2 withdrawals.
Oh, okay, sure.
We need to vote on those, though. We need to make those motions.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I didn't include the motions to accept the withdrawals.
Yeah.
We have those.
Isn't that what you just handed them?
I did,
So that would be what we were gonna propose, so before you sign it, I think we need to
Right.
vote on it, okay? You wanna take a look at that, right?
Yeah, he knows what, yeah, I think he's fine with it.
Do we need to, do that first? I'm gonna review this.
I think we do need to do that, yeah. Procedure. Takes all the fun out of it.
And if I write something in here?
Please do.
I'm wondering if we can make this a modification of one of the existing decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 97-17 decision granted the use variance for the restaurant, I think, at that
Yeah.
point.
That's what I'm
But there's
wondering.
no specific condition within that decision.
For,
I mean, to reference back. So unlike the 7 or 8 conditions that are related to the site, it just states it was, the use variances were granted in the 97 decision.
I'm just wondering what our hardship is here. You know, I mean, we haven't mentioned anything now, this is a brand-new variance now, we've gotta prove hardship.
Well, I mean, if you
Which
could
they
take.
were able to find in this decision, and I guess I'll.
I mean, it's-
This is what started the whole thing, so if they were able to find hardship, and we're able to modify this decision to include these uses, as you stated here, they've already found that,
Yeah.
hardship. Use variances to me are pretty hard to justify, so
Yeah, and
I'm
the-
trying to
the-
leverage what's already been done
Right,
here.
right, and the variance criteria for use, for the grant of a use variance is contained in the draft decision. It outlines, it's consistent with what variances, what the decision was on the prior decisions, in terms of
Yeah, I'm
use
kinda
and the
following.
sign variances.
Should've read it.
Basically, without the grant of a use variance, is
Sorry.
the property would have substantial hardship because we couldn't use the property.
Do you want
Um,
this?
That's not
for
the
intended
case anymore,
uses.
though,
Let's keep going.
right?
Page 4.
Well, it is,
I'm being a little bit of a stickler, but I'm, you know.
They can't get tenants.
What's the downside of making an amendment to that decision? As opposed to granting a new variance?
I think it's form over substance. I mean, you could modify the 97 decision to allow the new uses, or you could grant a completely separate,
I think that's what Jeff's getting at. He'd rather modify it, and
fine.
the reason why we are trying to do that is over the past few years, we've been really breaking down findings, special permits, variances, and we're trying to be as specific as we possibly can about those. And
Sure.
variances, this board, we're very much sticklers on hardship.
Mhm.
And it's never financial from our perspective. It could be for, applicants, but,
It can be financial or otherwise, but it's gotta be tied to the
The law
site.
requires,
It's
yeah.
gotta be tied to the
Right.
soil condition, shape, or topography of the site, which, I
So
mean, use variances, I mean, it's hard to, you know what I mean? It's hard to make that connection, and it should be. You know, you can't use this site for any other, which is, I think, the determination that they made, I guess, is what you were saying before.
Mhm.
The determination they made is that you can't, I think it was in here. I was saying it wasn't a viable business. I mean, you have to show that it can't be used for the appropriate residential.
and try converting that building to a residential.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, we've had other cases where
Right.
people was calling in, they want to use variance because it's financially viable. It makes sense.
Right.
Well, it's not that easy, I mean, we try to, this is a different animal here, and it's got a lot of history to it. I'm trying to sort of leverage that by saying, they issued a variance at this site for a specific purpose. We all now recognize that there are some other uses that have taken place there that are also reasonable, and so we'd like to maybe modify that decision to include them, specifically. I don't know if does that make any sense or not to you? No.
No, it does. I mean, I think our application and petition outline the basis for the variance. I don't think the board has to make the findings as part of the hearing, but it could make the findings as part of the decision, the final decision.
Yeah, I guess what, you're saying is you're tying the history into that decision in this discussion, so I guess I see what you're saying, so. Sorry, I did not, like I said, I did not have time to review this whole thing, and I know you did that. So, okay, so what you're saying is, yeah, all right, I'm good with that. As far as granting a variance, because it's all gonna be defined in the history as to why this is appropriate, so.
We have to call up that,
I don't know
so
about
we're not
anybody
making a
else.
modification, we're making a whole new motion?
Well, that's what they've actually petitioned for.
No,
Right.
they amended.
I mean, the motion that I've drafted
Your original
there.
petition is, or not, was for a variance, right?
Yep.
Or was it for a modification?
No, for,
It's
it's
for
here,
modification.
application for,
Oh, it's in your app, it's right in here.
yeah, I'm, seeing application for variance. Oh, here we go, modification, decision is 9717, yep,
Yeah.
so that's what we should do.
Right, I guess, so I've gone in a full circle here. So you, you originally, we're looking to modify an existing decision, right?
Right,
Okay, and that's what we're still doing.
right.
All right. So I was thinking that we're granting a new variance here. That's what that was my issue. What we're proposing here is to grant a variance for this. Well, we're not granting a new variance, we're granting a modification to the existing variance to include this.
Which allows one more use.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. Then we're all on the same page.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Let's call back, as we read this over, let's call back to that original, let's find that original, decision,
It's right here.
so we can, alright. So we're making a modification to this decision. Specifically,
Sorry. You've been engrossed in this for months, and we only get 1 hour, 2 hours a month.
9717.
Yeah, I mean, we can,
Oh, two and a
I can move and then clarify it in the decision, that's fine.
Okay,
Um,
all right, good.
You wanna make a motion?
I know two.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the one that was the sticker the whole time, so I'm gonna make a motion. Give me a second. Okay.
Mhm.
Let's see if this makes sense. Okay, so I move that the board modify existing variance decision file 9717 dated December 31st, 1997 to include include the following uses in addition to the restaurant: retail stores and services, businesses and medical facilities, businesses and medical offices, and a driving school. And we grant dimensional variances with respect to the freestanding sign as per the standing sign plan identified as Exhibit 8. And with the following condition, additional condition, that site changes are limited to the proposed building renovations depicted on the plans listed as Exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8. All other conditions of decision 9717 shall remain in effect.
Should someone else make that motion to withdraw a petition?
That's,
She wrote those up, didn't she?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got them right here.
we can do that after. Those are unrelated, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, I shouldn't say that, but separately.
Yeah, separately is fine.
Second.
So, that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So I left the restaurant, we're adding the other three. This specifically allows for the restaurant, we're adding businesses, medical offices, and a driving school. Okay?
And the retail stores and services.
And the retail stores and services, sorry, you're right. Yeah. We're adding three. Retail stores and services, businesses and medical offices, and a driving school. and you've already been granted specifically the restaurant in this
Right.
decision. And granting dimensional variances with respect to the freestanding sign as per the standing sign plan identified as Exhibit 8, which we have. With the following additional condition that the site changes are limited to the proposed building renovations depicted on plans listed in Exhibits 5, 6, 7, and 8, and that all other conditions of the variance 9717 remain in effect. For now. Is that all right?
Sure, yes.
Second?
Okay.
All those in favor? If you want discussion, we can have it.
We can do a roll call, just to, oh, yeah, discussion, I guess.
That's okay, I think we've,
This is pretty sparse, but the, you know, your, the decision will obviously be more detailed.
Gina?
There's a lot in there.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dave? And yes for me too. Unanimous.
Want to do this?
Yep, yep.
Do you want? I'd like to make a motion to allow the applicant petitioner Constantine G. Scrivanos, Mr. Realty Trust, being represented by John T. Smolak, Esquire of Smolak and Vaughn of North Andover, Mass., to withdraw without prejudice water resource application filed on July 29th, 2013 for the property located at 6474 East Main Street, Georgetown, Mass., and also to allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice the special permit application to allow for change, extension, or an alteration of a pre-existing lawful non-conforming use and structure under Chapter 165 through 87 and 94 of bylaw and MGL 40A, Section 6 and 9, in connection with certain proposed site improvement. Also to consent to partially withdraw without prejudice the use variance petition as it relates to both the proposed animal hospital and printing shop uses. Part of file number 14-03, filed on July 29th, 2013 for the property located at 6474 East Main Street, Georgetown, Mass.
Sound good to you?
Sounds good.
I'll second that.
Second.
I beat you to it.
Gina?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And I'm yes. Well, we made some progress.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I have,
Okay.
there is a 20-day appeal period. Following 14 days, clerk has to file a written decision. The town clerk, a person who exercises rights under the appealed special permit variance, does so at risk. Someone make a motion to close the hearing, please.
I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep.
Did anyone, do we need to make a motion to close the business meeting? I don't know if I did that.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to close the business meeting.
Second.
To the extent that it's not already closed.
Yeah.
In case it's not already closed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye.
All right.
Kathleen,
Aye,
we're good?
aye, aye, aye.
Great, thanks so much. Pleasure meeting you as well.
That was fairly complicated.